Craig McNamara is the president and owner of Sierra Orchards, a diversified farming operation that includes field, processing, and marketing operations, producing primarily organic walnuts. He also serves as the founder and president of the Center for Land-Based Learning. The goal of this innovative program is to assist high school students in becoming lifelong learners, overcoming barriers to change, and building greater social and human capital in their communities. Mr. McNamara is a graduate of the California Agricultural Leadership Program and a senior fellow of the American Leadership Forum. He is passionate about sharing his knowledge in sustainable agriculture and leadership with the world around him. California FFA, please give a warm welcome for the president of the California State Board of Food and Agriculture, Mr. Craig McNamara.
Good morning, California FFA. It's so exciting to be here with you today. And Nicole, thank you very much for that very kind announcement and introduction. Oh, telling your story, it's so important. I wanted to take a brief moment to read from you a quote from a visionary thinker. "The earth is the mother of us all, plants, animals, and men. Nature treats the earth kindly. Man treats her harshly. He overplows the cropland, overgrazes the pasture land, and overcuts the timberland. He destroys millions of acres completely. This terribly destructive process is excusable in a young civilization. It is not excusable in the United States. We know what can be done, and we are beginning to do it. As individuals, we are beginning to do the necessary things. As a nation, we are beginning to do them. The public is waking up. And just in time. In another 30 years, it might have been too late." Can you guess when this was written? It was actually written in 1938 by Henry Wallace, U.S. Secretary of Agriculture. That was a very bold and frank assessment of agriculture in the United States in that era, almost 3/4 of a century ago. And yet as a farmer, farming in the past 35 years, I too have faced many of those same challenges that Henry Wallace was talking about in terms of soil quality, water quality, and loss of millions of acres across this nation. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about my own story and how I became a farmer, because it's a rather untraditional one. I actually grew up in the nation's capital, and that's actually a picture of me. I grew up in the 60s, and as you recall, the 60s was a very turbulent time. Our nation was at war. There was tremendous anti-war protests. There was the hippies. There was a lot of cultural changes. And maybe like some of your lives today, it was very confusing to be a teenager at that time. And it was no different in my family. I grew up in a very politicized family. I made the decision to come to California to go to college. Very exciting adventure for me, and after 1 year, I dropped out. I was beginning to lose hope and vision in this wonderful, remarkable country that we share and that we live in. I started a journey that would end up taking me 2 years through Mexico, Central America, and Latin America. And the truth be told, I didn't know where that journey would lead me. But during those years, I had the opportunity to work on small farms, live with peasants, work in their fields, and mentors were incredibly important to me, the men and women that I met along the way. I had the opportunity to work with Manuel Torres in Michoacan, Mexico. Manuel and his family lived in a home with a dirt floor, no electricity, no running water, and I spent a year working with them in their sugarcane fields. And I would look out over vast hectares of sugarcane fields, and I would say to Manuel, "How are we ever going to hoe all of these cane plants?" And he would say, "Don't worry about that. Just focus on the one job that you have today and get it done." It was people like Manuel and that experience in Latin America, working on farms, small and large, that brought to me together the world of agriculture. It brought to me the world of politics and growing into something that was so profound. I realized that's what I wanted to do as my profession, and yet I had no education. So I was very fortunate to come to UC Davis, get a degree in plant and soil science, and work with another mentor, Ton Lum. Ton was a wonderful produce grower in the Dixon, Northern California area, and Ton allowed me to work under him for 3 years. I don't know why he did it at certain times, because I think I made every possible mistake a new and young farmer could make. One of the things that I enjoyed doing was farming 100 acres of what we called truck crops. So that was just mixed produce, mixed melons, and we had a stand along Route 80 where we sold those products. But what I learned from that experience was, as a beginning farmer, it was so difficult, and financially it was very, very constricting on my life. So rather than focus on vegetables, I wanted to find a crop that would allow me one harvest, more control over the marketplace, and less perishability. My golden crop was walnuts, and that's what I've been doing for the last 35 years. I came into the university system with what I would call a very sustainable vision of agriculture. And yet when I hit the ground farming, I came and I adopted a more conventional techniques for farming. It really took me about a decade to transition from a more conventional system to a more sustainable system, and eventually to an organic system. And the question is why? My wife and I raised 3 children in our orchard, and we just thought, from the standpoint of the environment, from the standpoint of the people that work in the orchards with us, and from the standpoint of something very important, and that's profitability, we could be more profitable growing organic. Along the way, I met many people, and I never forgot the importance of mentors. And thank you, Nicole, for mentioning the Center for Land-Based Learning. It is something that I'm passionate about, and our goal there is to teach the next generation of decision makers, that's you, about stewardship, about land management, about sustainable agriculture and conservation. And I'm so proud that this program is working with thousands of students across the state, from the north of Chico all the way to San Diego, and maybe some of you have been involved in this program. And one of the other things that's very important at the Center for Land-Based Learning is encouraging you to go on and further your education at a 2-year college, a 4-year college, or a vocational career. I happened to be at the California Endowment on Friday, part of a seminar focusing on higher education, and I heard a startling fact, and that is by the year 2025, that's 13 years from now, that's our kindergartners, California will be short 1 million college graduates. That means that in 13 short years, there will be over 1 million jobs, and we will not have enough California college graduates to fill those jobs. You are going to correct that. You are going to be the leaders. You're going to make sure that that challenge is met. And speaking of challenges, this is a time of unprecedented challenges. Certainly the most that I've ever experienced in my life, and maybe the most since the time that Henry Wallace wrote those words in 1938. You heard about many of those challenges last night. I was so honored and proud to be here to listen to your discussions about water, about climate change, about population growth. Some of you really mentioned that. These are many of the challenges that California faces. But for me, one of the most difficult challenges is the fact that 18% of our fellow citizens are food insecure. That means that over 7 million people a day in this great state do not know where their next meal is coming from. I think you'll agree with me that this is inexcusable in a state that's producing over 50% of the nation's fresh fruits and vegetables. So these challenges, as great as they are, water is another very significant one. I don't know if you recently saw that UC Davis published a report saying that nitrate contamination in California's water and drinking water is pervasive. The 2 areas that the UCD report focused on were the Salinas Valley and the San Joaquin Valley. 1 million families, 1 million people's drinking water is affected by those problems. And you know what? It took us 50 years to create this problem. And the UC Davis report indicates that 90% of the nitrate contamination comes from our beloved chosen profession of agriculture. My point to you is we must do something to ensure that Californians have safe, quality, quantity of drinking water. The report said that that's going to cost us $25 to $35 million a year to do that. So my question too is, who's going to pay for that? Is it just going to be on the shoulders of agriculture? Or is it something that we're going to have to share as a society? Didn't we all benefit by those 50 years of crop production, creating one of the most bountiful agricultural systems in all of the world? I think you'll agree with me that it should be a shared expense. All the while, globally, 1 billion of our citizens, 1 billion of our global citizens, and that includes us, are killing ourselves eating too much food and too high a caloric food intake. Why 1 billion of our global citizens at the bottom of the food chain do not have enough food to eat every day and are suffering lives of malnutrition and starvation. We cannot afford to let this go on. So the challenges are great, greater than any time in my lifetime, but so too are the opportunities. I so enjoyed hearing you speak about the opportunities facing California agriculture. And you know what? It's going to take you. It's going to take your innovation, your drive, your education, your excitement, your ability to ensure that we have a sustainable and healthy food supply for all Californians well into the future. So we'd like a sustainable and healthy planet. We want to make sure that the men and women who work on farms, the farm workers, the farm owners, the farm laborers, have a healthy and successful life so that they have homes, education, and sufficient food. And we want to make sure that we have a healthy profit for all of this.